People find their way to the 12 steps because they have to, because they're desperate to. They find their way there because they were forced to go to a meeting by the courts, or because their family was going to kick them out if they didn't do something. If you're not one of those desperate people, it's very unlikely that you're going to find your way to these steps. It's something you have to do because you were desperate and had nothing else to do. And yet I'm here to tell you, these steps are for everyone. They could benefit everyone. And the magic and the power of these steps cuts across all of human experience. This is actually a beautiful, beautiful path, sets a foundation for a life well lived.
So I'm calling in today from Tel Aviv, Israel, where I've been here since 2017. And my question is more of a, I would just like your thoughts on, in the last 2 years have been on this path where I've been studying in this place called Tao Therapy, which is a school for psychotherapy and healing from addiction, trauma, and PTSD, which is, we're going to be seeing a lot of that, I think, in the near future.
I think that's a very prophetic statement.
Yeah. And in my own path, my own journey, my eyes have been open to such a wonderful experience of 12 steps and the 12-step program. I wanted your thoughts about the 12-step program, not only for those healing from outer and physical addictions, but also the inner addictions of just trauma, PTSD, different things, personality disorders or personality, things that happen more within people. A lot of times we say that we're blessed because, we're addicts and we've had this, opportunity to see something from the outside affecting us so much that it made us turn inside. A lot of people don't have that opportunity. They don't take that path. But I believe, and I was wondering what your thoughts were on what you think about the 12-step program helping as a therapy for those people.
Yep. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Amit, for this very important and eloquently presented inquiry. Imagine I came to a person, any, quote, normal person, who was, managing in the world. Let's just put it like that. They're managing in the world. They're not, they can't point to a specific addiction. They're not addicted to drugs, alcohol. They're not acting out sexually. Their relationships are, maybe a bit of a struggle, but no one's getting hurt, They're not in any kind of particular debt in the world, financially speaking. Maybe they're a little caught up in shopping and having things, and they, just generally speaking, they're managing in the world. But they experience stress. They experience occasionally depression or a sense of purposelessness. Maybe they experienced anxiety, a sense that something's wrong and they're not really sure what to do about it. But it's not any kind of massive anxiety. It's low grade. Imagine this person, if they're honest with themselves, they have a bit of a struggle in their relationship with food. Maybe not because it shows on their body, but because they know that when they start to feel stressed or they feel anxious, that they turn to the refrigerator for a solution. And so maybe they're eating their feelings and they don't feel particularly, necessarily vibrant in their body. Maybe this person is moving on past their third decade. So in their fourth decade, in their 40s, they're starting to feel something akin to chronic pain. Although they don't know it yet because it's just, my joints hurt. I notice when I bend down, like to pick something up off the ground, like my left knee, it hurts. Like this is what the person might report. Or, wow, my back, I have a low-grade pain in my back almost all the time. Or my mobility isn't what it once was. And, well, I just attribute that to age. Now, I've just described almost everybody. Except the people who are doing much worse than the person I described. And there's a heck of a lot of those. But that middle of the ground person who's not really suffering, but they're not really thriving either. That's what I'm trying to describe. In our world today, those are the fortunate people. That's frightening. So, those people will almost never find themselves in front of the 12 steps. Because in order to find yourself in front of the 12 steps, you need to identify with being in an incredible amount of pain. And you need to feel like something absolutely has to change. Or you won't find yourself in front of that doctrine. That's an incredible shame. That's what we call a marketing problem. That's a big marketing problem. If the only way you can find yourself to this particular path, which let's just say, I'll explain my thoughts about it in a minute, but let's just say I believe the path works, that it offers something valuable. If the only way you can find your way there is by being desperate, is by being at a bottom, is by suffering so bad that you have no other choice, well, that's going to limit the number of people that are willing to even look at the path that you're asking this inquiry about. So I just want to preface with that. This is a hard thing to find your way to. People find their way to the 12 steps because they have to, because they're desperate to. They find their way there because they were forced to go to a meeting by the courts, or because their family was going to kick them out if they didn't do something. Or they were so desperate themselves and they were fearing losing their mind or dying that they summoned the courage, or they surrendered into the idea of walking into a 12-step meeting. And then they look up onto the wall, and there are the 12 steps and the 12 traditions, and they're introduced, at least visually for the first time, to this doctrine of the 12 steps. Okay. If you're not one of those desperate people, as I said, it's very unlikely that you're going to find your way to these steps. You will have heard about them because one of your loved ones ended up there, but thank God it's not you. And so it just remains this thing that people who are sick, who are terribly sick, have to do these steps. Isn't it unfortunate? What I'm painting for you is the way most people outside of 12-step programs understand the 12 steps. It's something you have to do because you were desperate and had nothing else to do. And yet I'm here to tell you, these steps are for everyone. They could benefit everyone. And the magic and the power of these steps cuts across all of human experience. The fact that people who are addicts or struggle with addiction in some way are the ones who are fortunate enough to find themselves there, notwithstanding that fact, this is for everyone. This is actually a beautiful, beautiful path that sets a foundation for a life well lived. It does not offer all the answers to life's struggles. It sets a foundation to live a great life. Let's unpack this a little bit. If somebody went to school, the School of the Recovery Arts, I just got into the School of the Recovery Arts. Isn't it exciting? I'm going to a university. Yay. And I'm going to learn about recovery. I'm not an addict and I'm not anything, but I'm just a human being. But wow, what's the first thing they teach at the School of the Recovery Arts? Oh, it's this 12-part doctrine. Interesting. What is it? Oh, okay. Well, the first thing is that you admit that you're human, that you don't know everything, that you have patterns of belief and behavior that keep you stuck, no matter who you are. Everybody has patterns of belief and behavior that keep them stuck. And so the first thing you have to do is say, oh, I'm one of those people. I recognize this. This is part of the human condition. Wow, I'm so glad to recognize this. I'm not so different than everybody else. Wow, I thought I was. All right. Then the next step is a recognition that the problem that we have seems to be that we don't know how to access and relate to power, like empowerment. And so all we do is we say to ourselves and to each other, there is a way to connect with a power that's beyond the power that we currently have access to. And we call this power a power greater than ourself. There's many, many different ways to look at that. You can say also, we're not just connecting with more power or empowering ourselves, but we're also connecting with consciousness itself. What does that mean? In the most plain terms, it simply means we're going to work on becoming a more conscious human being. And what does that mean? That means we're going to work on becoming more aware today of everything than we were yesterday. And we've decided this is a good path to be on. So in the third step, what we're going to do is make a decision. Now that I've decided, now that I've come to the understanding that it's a good thing to connect with more power, to become a wiser and more conscious human being, I've made a decision that I'm going to do this now. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, makes sense so far. So far, nothing too offensive for most people. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin to go through a process now of self-inquiry. I'm going to look at my life. And interestingly, I'm going to look at my life not like plot points, like this happened to me, that happened to me, then this happened to me. No, this is what I did next. That's what no, none of that. It's where do I feel and have held on to resentment? So wise, such an incredibly wise and skillful thing to direct someone to do. Why? Because we're going to learn more about ourselves by understanding where we have held on, where our anger is, where our disappointment is, where our expectations were not met, where we feel either perceived or in a real way, people hurt us. And what were our reactions to that? We're going to learn so much about looking at our life and doing this inventory, this self-inquiry, that we're going to begin to step into the very thing that we were looking for back in number 1, 2, and 3, which was more power. What's been keeping us from power? Patterns of belief and behavior that no longer serve us. How do we figure it out? We got to do a little digging. Where have we been holding on? Where have our relationships gone awry? This is how it's going to happen for us. And after we drudge up all that information and we really feel into and we start to see our patterns, we're going to share that with another human being. And in a very spiritual sense, spiritual meaning we're relating to something that cannot be seen, that can only be experienced in a more subtle way. At first, we have to have some faith. Later on, we'll actually have a relationship with this thing. We don't need the faith anymore than we know. But at first, it requires a little faith. And the most cynical people among us will say, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not interested in this spiritual aspect of life. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And I might say to that person, well, what power exists that's beating your heart right now? You don't have to think about it. There seems to be a power. it's working to generate this heartbeat for you. In fact, when you were a fetus in your mother's womb at 5 weeks, all you were cells dividing. That clump of cells at 5 weeks all of a sudden starts to beat. What's that power? Look outside at the tree. Look at a leaf of a tree. Look at the organization of it. What organized that? Was it you? No. There seems to be an intelligence beyond us, which is impossible to describe, impossible to grasp. But it's very interesting and a very, very good idea to begin to relate to it and open yourself to the force that generates these things, organizes these things, and ultimately destroys these things too. That's a good force to connect with. So in this fourth step of this self-inquiry, and then the fifth step of sharing with another human being, what we found, we're also going to share with, in our mind, we're sharing with spirit. What does that look like? Simply to say, I'm open that this information just be seen. I'm expressing what I've known to one person and to spirit. Cool. There's an openness there. There's a beginning. There's a little bit of a thing happening by this point. Then on the sixth step and seventh step, we step into our prayerful state. We begin to get into this other complicated concept of prayer, which simply means we are stepping into a feeling. Most people think prayer is about words. Prayer is about feeling. What are we feeling? I'm feeling into the future me. I'm feeling into the future me that is not plagued by the things that I uncovered in my fourth step. I uncovered a lot of stuff. Wow, I was selfish in many ways, fearful in many ways. I've lied at times, I cheated at times, I did all these things. I'm not proud of those things, but I'm learning from them now. I'm not hiding from them. I'm not suppressing them. I'm releasing them. And I'm now in step 6 and 7, I'm feeling into a future version of myself that doesn't anymore feel or sense the burden of those things in my being. What does that feel like to be free of all that stuff I was holding on to? All the memory of places that I may have missed the mark in my own behavior or words, or getting beyond where other people might have missed the mark and have actually hurt me in real ways, physically, emotionally, sexually, whatever it was. How can I get past that? Because I can't be burdened by that for a lifetime and expect to live a successful life. 6 and 7 are about this moving into this feeling. It's a visualization. And yes, meditation, contemplation, slow down, calm down, sit down, connect. And then after that, I'm feeling ready. And I'm in the readiness and the feeling of what it's going to be like to be in the future me. I have to do another really important process. I have to find the people in the world in step 8 and step 9 that I, through my own selfishness, self-centeredness, deceitfulness, when I was not behaving in my best foot forward kind of way, I hurt some people. I caused some problems. I need to own it. I need to own it. If I own it, I can release it. I can be in the world where there's no negativity between me and another human being. So I have to write them all down on step 8, and then I have to go find them wherever possible. As long as me presenting myself in this 9th step in the amended state of the new me, I'm making an amends. That means I'm presenting myself as an amended human being. As an amended human being, now I can look at somebody and say, when I was that person that I used to be, I recognize that I hurt you. This is what I imagine I did. Does that resonate for you? Is that accurate for you? Did I miss anything? What was your experience? And most importantly, I'm not that person anymore, and I'll never do that to you again. I'm never going to behave like that to you again. And this is part of my process of stepping into freedom. And you make your amends to each person wherever possible, face to face, if not by letter, if not by letter, and then burning that to somebody who might not be on the planet anymore. After that's all done, guess what? I'm light. I'm liberated from the state of incarceration, self-imposed, that I used to be in. I used to think the world was doing things to me. Now, I understand that I'm collaborating in the unfolding of reality in front of me. I am collaborating with the Great Spirit and the great intelligence around me. I have a way to do that. It's called intuition, focus, concentration. And I have all these tools to help me for the rest of my life to become better and better at that. Will I still make mistakes? You bet I will. All the time. But I'll catch them more quickly than I used to, and I'll fix them much more quickly than I used to. And that's where step 10 comes in. On a daily basis, I review the day and I clean the day at the end of the day. And I make sure I go to bed clean that night. Clean energetically. Clean in my mind. Not anxious, not angry, not struggling. Now it's to be aspired to. There are days when sometimes it's impossible to fix everything that happened that day and make it just right so that you get to go to bed 100% clean, but you understand this is the effort. And you move into step 11, which is a never-ending daily process of prayer and meditation, yoga. Yoga. This is your yoga. What do I mean by yoga? Union, oneness, wholeness, every day. What are we working on? Is there anything more important? Of course not. What could be more important in the world than wholeness, oneness, health, wellness, presence? So we have an opportunity through our practices. This is the Recovery 2.0 side of things, which you bring into the 12-step work. In the 12 steps, it's in the original text of the 12 steps, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not particularly specific. And it even says, go outside, reach outside and find ways to get better and better at this. It very humbly says, we don't know all the ways you can do this. Go and seek, find ways. But most importantly, do it. Find ways, calm the mind, stay present, connect more deeply, break out of these patterns, get yourself free. And then we come to step 12, and the greatest revelation of all comes to us. The whole time, we thought this was about us. It's the greatest joke. Nobody tells you up front. We were just prepping you to be of service in the world. Not just in the context of 12-step program of passing this on to someone else. That is a very powerful form of service, and that's very important. But not just that. Not just that. In every way, serve. Not in a depleting way. Serve as only you can serve. I can do things that nobody else can. Everybody else can do things that I can't do. Everyone has a unique way of being in this world. Everyone has their unique personality. Serve in the way that you can. It's not like you wake up and you're like, well, I think I'll do my service work from, 10 o'clock to 11, and then I'll be done with my service work. No, this is the orientation to the world and to life is one of service. Why? Because that is where the most joy and the greatest possible outcome can take place. That's why. Are we all going to do this? No. Why not? Because we have something called an ego. And the ego likes to hold on. Things the way they were. I don't want anything to change. What about me? What about me? What about my needs? I have this need. I have that need. And so we'll go off on our travels. We'll get off track for a minute or two. We'll explore this thing. We'll explore that thing. We'll buy this thing. We'll get into that relationship, which wasn't the right relationship for us, which we knew, but it didn't matter. We'll have sex over here and act out that way. Maybe that'll fix things. We'll go to the refrigerator, open it up, and hope there's salvation in there. We'll do all these things. But we're going to keep coming back, keep coming back, keep coming back, keep recognizing, wow, I made the same mistake again. When will I choose a different thing? I still thought the external world was what it was all about. Trying to align all this, trying to manipulate, trying to control, trying to create certain futures, certain outcomes. Wow, when am I going to stop doing that? All you have to do is serve. The 12 steps are there so that you can serve more effectively. From a lighter place, from a clean place, from a connected place, from a more intelligent place. Without that, we can be very caught up in the swirl of our own concerns, our own needs. We'll be remaining in the resentments that we've held all these years, and we'll stay in those resentments for a lifetime. People will have wronged us, and we'll be able to tell the story over and over about how they wronged us and how, because they wronged us so badly, we can live the rest of our life talking about it and never get free. In the worst of the cases, we'll become angry, bitter, violent. We'll attack other people. And guess what? Those other people will attack back. And so it goes on and on throughout time, forever and ever. Or we can all just do the work of the 12 steps and wake up. Let go of the parts that aren't serving us anymore and step into more power. Now, what seems to be the problem with that? Where is the hang-up that people have? The word God? Okay, choose another word. The fact that only sick people are working this program? Okay, that's going to be a real deterrent, as I said at the beginning. People are going to look from the outside and they're going to say, oh, that's a program for sick people. I'm not one of them. I'm not doing that program. It's okay. You don't have to do the 12 steps. But the things that the 12 steps achieve for a human being, I kind of feel like you have to do those things. Some way, some shape, some form. Or you hold on to your resentments for a lifetime. And you hold on to your grudges for a lifetime. And you never get to serve and be free. So what do I think of the 12 steps? For anybody and everybody, I think it's the greatest thing. Now, one of the caveats is, and this is very important for people to hear, I really hope that you hear this. I used the word doctrine earlier, that this is a doctrine. People gather, congregation, people congregate around the doctrine. It's the same with Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Sikhism, Hinduism, Buddhism, every ism. People gather around the doctrine. And people interpret the doctrine in different ways. You have orthodox approaches. You have conservative approaches, reformed approaches, very wild approaches, unusual approaches. You have everything. So if you come to the 12 steps, your experience with that doctrine is going to be affected by the person who takes you through it. And that's really important for people to understand. That if you're turned off by the experience you had going through this 12 steps, try another sponsor or guide. Because there's real genius and there's real magic there. Very, very, very special thing. And as I spoke about the 12 steps just now in a very relatively unorthodox way, I don't think that anything I said would be offensive to anyone. I don't think so. I hope not. But the idea of self-inquiry and letting go of resentments and healing damage you may have caused and then serving, very few people have a problem with these ideas. Nobody would look at that and say, nah. You know, it's like, okay, this sounds like an important thing. Let's dig in. So those are some thoughts on this, Amit, on what I feel. I wish it was easier for people to grasp. I wish it was easier for people to access. Whatever the hesitations and barriers to it are, I wish people would do their best to get around those barriers and to get into this thing, because there's something genius there. Now, finally, I would say this about any religious path. Please, anybody who is religious, please don't take it personally. This is for me. Take what works and leave the rest. I would say this for any religious path, any spiritual path, and I say this for the 12 steps. Don't make the path your life. Don't do it. Don't make the 12 steps your life. Get a life because of the 12 steps. I would say the same of all those other paths. If you make this thing your life, it's very easy to miss life. It's very easy to become fanatic, dogmatic, and it's very easy to start to tell other people what you think they ought to be doing and what you think they ought to be believing. And whenever people, any group of people gets together and tries to tell another group of people what they should be believing, things don't go well. It's not just the Middle East, it's the entire world. And it's throughout all of history. Pick any era in history, anywhere in the world where one group of people was like, you should be doing it our way. Like, that didn't end up well. Okay? That didn't go well for that group of people. One of them ended up, being violent with the other. Probably both sides, as we're experiencing now. So the 12 steps could lead to equanimity, greater understanding, greater compassion, greater freedom, ease, greater ease. And some of the conflicts and the things that used to baffle us, as we know from the promises, they fall away. So, Amit, what comes up for you as I'm exploring this?
As soon as you said that about the path, there's a saying that we have at the school. It says, there's no path to love. Love is the path.
I love that so much. And that's it. Let's, ultimately, let's fall in love. Let's fall into love, and let's let that be the thing that's happening here. And I really do believe this is one of the 12 steps, is one way that someone could find themselves to a greater expression of love.